Hey, welcome everyone to the Friday Gurdjieff group. Um, we're sponsored by the Theosophical Society of America, and Vishturga is our host and a participant in the group. Our facilitators are Oka DeBoer, Marcel Pardo, myself, Gwen Mayer. So we are going to take a moment. I ask you to all mute your microphones and take a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. I have put together a couple of excerpts from De Salte y'all were reading while I was gone, and basically I had some questions, so I'm going to show you. This is out of Higher Being Bodies. Just three little things. I was going to read them because I had some questions for Oka and the rest of you. On page 206, he says the lower feeling center, which has derived its feelings as a result of unabsorbed impressions and of imitating other people during childhood, is an obstacle, especially for man number 1, man number 2, and man number 3 in their effort to acquire real I. Progress in this regard will come only if they learn to use their attention consciously and then start using these feelings for their spiritual evolution. For man number 4 and man number 5, the issue is different. The lower feeling center is a hindrance to contacting real I and making it permanent. These men need to learn to remember themselves in order to verify the heart area. According to ancient Egyptian esotericism, the lower nature has its base in the liver, spleen, and bile. This is also the base of our personalities. And I wanted to say, before I go on, that all through esoteric literature, there is a reference to these endocrine systems and the liver, spleen, and bile, and goes way back into Sumeria and beyond. Our possible higher nature has its base at the heart area, the frontal lobes of the brain. For man number 1, man number 2, and man number 3, the lower nature is the motor of their lives. Everything is personal, therefore seen through colored glass. If man is to grow in being, he needs to seek liberation from his personal attachments, especially in his feelings. When feelings are mixed with the personal, they cannot give true knowledge. Our feeling centers need to be desalted or purified, prevented from mixing with the lower nature so that they can become tools for gaining true knowledge. When feelings are mixed with the personal, they become distorted and cannot function as possible food for the higher in us. They will simply not be able to reach levels beyond the psychological worlds 96 and 48. It is the feelings of remorse that can help us here. And that was one of my questions. And then I got this off of something announcing Higher Being Bodies from Oka. Through the intelligence of the heart and the established contact with spiritual witness, we will feel that we are a part of the cosmos or nature. Dualistic thinking is one of the major consequences of Kunda buffer. It gives the illusion that we have an existence outside of nature, and I here and the rest of the cosmos there. Even our so-called scientists and theologians do it. There is nothing more dangerous than dualistic ideas in empty heads. With the being of a fly, one is playing God. So I'm going to open it up to comments. My question, of course, is how do we detach from these feelings and understand that our lower nature is always active? So that's my question.
You mentioned the endocrine system and the secretions that go into our bloodstream, coming from the different glands and so on and so forth, the suprarenal glands, and the pituitary, and the thyroid, and all of that stuff, which is connected, of course, with the chakras. But I've been interested in observing my moods. There was a time in the scientific jargon that they talk about humors. As a matter of fact, when you had some kind of a disease, they would take your blood out to get the bad humors out. And the humors, although it was now considered, a very primitive way of thinking, the humors are the secretions of the glands. And every mood, whether it's depression or excitement or anger or whatever, is related to those secretions in the blood, and it's all organic stuff, So if we think that those are our feelings, if we identify those secretions that create a certain state in us, whether it's depression or excitement or whatever, if we think this is our feelings, we're completely identified with the lower centers, with the spleen, with the liver, and so on and so forth. That's the way I view it, and so that's a theoretical thing. But if you can separate, if you regard yourself as this being a machine that is governed by electrical impulses and by stuff from the outside, and the corresponding secretions that the body puts out, then you have a chance. Just the same way you do not identify with your thoughts, like the T-shirt I have from a friend of mine. My mind is not of my business, kind of thing. So it sounds funny, but we are completely have been taught to identify ourselves with our thoughts, which are not ours, because most of them they have been induced in us through education, through acquired consciousness, and to identify ourselves with our moods, and that's our life. We spend our life in let's say in those two areas, either in this tower out there, or something happening in our bloodstream that we're not aware of, and yet it rules our lives.
So, Marcel, would it be like, okay, you're in a mood, you're feeling something, and by naming that feeling, when your wife or somebody says, what's going on with you? By naming it, you become attached or identified. Is that right?
Well, yeah, it could be, I guess, but one of the first things that Gurdjieff teaches us, and it's in the Views from the Real World, is to separate ourselves from ourselves. To create, so some people, when they think of unity and non-duality, they think, well, that's dual thinking. Well, you need duality. You need to recognize that you're not that. You could consider that duality, but how can you achieve unity of when you are identified with something that you're not? I don't know if this makes any sense to you guys, but those are the comments that I wanted to make, because I've been thinking, I've been pondering in the moods and their link to endocrine secretions.
Yeah, and my readings, everything you said is just amazingly right on target to what I was reading. But I was amazed too at how Madame de Salzman could stay in a state of being and watch her moods or her feelings just pass, go in and out. She had a tremendous ability to do that.
We often talk about self-observation, and we talk of it as if it's something that we master, that we are very familiar with. And most of the things that I hear from people about self-observation is very mental. It's not an experience, and it's not an experience, and that includes myself till recently, because there is not a separation between you and your machine, between essence and personality, and and that's the beginning. When you really can see a mood, and you in order to observe anything in there has to be a witness that observes objectively, or without the influence of 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 those moods and so on and so forth. So there has to be a separation. What Gurdjieff says, you have to separate yourself from yourself, and you can only do that if you have an aim. Otherwise, what are the aim allows you to have a certain. Well, you have it's not what your body wants. It's not what your natural inclination or your acquired inclination wants. It's something that you have that has developed in you, that is not just mental, that it also lives in your heart, because you wish for something, because you have experienced something and you want more of that. That's anyway. Don't want to say anything else.
Well, I think the whole point of going to fourth and fifth man is exactly what you're saying. If we ever hope to rise above our duality, in a sense of, when I say rise above, I'm talking about objective consciousness, about that permanent witness. It seems like we're born into duality so that then we can observe it and not be subject to it, in other words.
Well, I think we're born into unity. And then we lose that, just like it happens in the Genesis, that we are kicked out of paradise.
Yes.
We lose that, that a child doesn't distinguish other people from themselves. I don't know, but I see I watch the new baby that we have in the family that's 4 weeks old, and it's amazing how she operates, and I know that. Or I watch my 5-year-old grandson, and how he is himself and is inappropriate because he's himself, and is now being told, you cannot do that. Like, he was in this field trip, and somebody made a comment that the bus driver may be late, and so when the bus driver comes, he says, "You were late," and the teacher berated him and humiliated him. "You don't talk like that to an adult. Who do you think you are? Blah, 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 blah." And the kid, cowered up. But he was just saying the truth. He had heard that the adults were saying that the bus was late. And then he confronted the guy, says, "You're late." And he's 5 years, he's not even 5. But he's already, scolded, and the fear of God is infused in him, because he said what he knew to be true. You see, and that's how it starts. That's how we lose our sense of individuality and freedom and so on and so forth. And we do that so that we can operate socially and be the slaves of whatever, the commerce or the state or whatever you want to call it.
So when we're conditioned, does that mean we slipped into the lower levels and have to live out of those lower levels?
Yes. And it has to do with time. A little bit. Maybe a lot. So we believe way too much in our emotions. And our emotions are derived from passing time. They're real, but they were there before we were born. They will be there after we die, and we believe in them too much. But it's not feeling. Feeling is eternity. Emotions is passing time. So we are fooled by our emotions, and we mistake them for real feelings.
So define the difference between emotion and feeling.
I just did. Feeling is eternity, and the emotions is time. Just past.
If you want to see it in the center, say in the heart chakra, or
your feeling. When your feeling center is no longer polluted by things from the outside, it can function as a brain, and it is a brain. This is why we are so warned in our work for negative emotions. And this is why Gurdjieff say we are degenerated and our feeling center is dispersed all over our etheric body, all over the chakras. He's right. And it is a brain, and it can work, it can help us to become really in touch with our second being brain. But therefore, we need a different attitude towards our emotions to come more in contact with our feelings.
The way I see it, it's like, say you have, let's say you talk about your heart and your emotions, and you place them here and in the surface, it's always in touch with what's happening around you and how it's touched around. It's the surface. But if you go deeper into the center, if you come into yourself, then you have something more permanent, something that it's as Oke says, it's eternal. It's the certainty and the wish for love, for truth, for beauty, faith, love, and hope. All of that is in us as an eternal thing. But the emotions, emotion has to do with movement and agitation and so on and so forth, and passing time. It's all in the surface. So our centers in the surface are polluted and contaminated by the trivia and the stuff and the glitter and the excitements and the news and the people telling us something and us getting offended, and they press our corns, and all of that is a very external part of us, which is associated with the external world and the passing time and the social environment that we live in. But that's not us. That's like a dress that is soiled. But if you go deeper, then that's why we sit, right? That's why we ponder, because we get in touch with something more essential in us, more core, our true nature. We approach our true nature. And that requires a protocol, because we've been taught to always be outside, always be excited, always be agitated, always be manipulated by whatever impression is out there and how we've been taught to interpret that impression. So you have to re-educate yourself and separate yourself from that which you think is you, that you've been used to think of, or to feel as you and to identify as you. It's a identification is necessary, but we identify with something that is not us. If you don't have an identity, how could you be an individual? But it's the wrong identity. It's not us.
I was listening to the conversation from last week, and towards the end, you folks have brought up this topic of what's happening on the outside. And also, I think Marcel was saying he remembered himself, but at the same time, the intensity of the situation at that point in time was difficult for him to get to where he wanted to be. What was going on there? Is it something that is I don't know how to put it, but there is something that's going on from within oneself, and there is something that is coming up from above, and these two need to fuse and get to the heart, which is where we need to be. In other words, the so-called self and the so-called personality need to fuse, and the self needs to override the personality for us to be where we are. Now, was it a situation where we feel that the personality is overriding the self? When we talk about, say, the specific example of what Marcel was talking about, or when you or Simona, y'all were talking about what's going on in the environment around, and then whether it is the political or whatever crap.
I'm sorry I speak so much, but when you were saying that, I was thinking, Bishop, of that happens because yourself is fragmented and dispersed all over. So you don't have a strong enough center of gravity, a permanent center of gravity that can coalesce your aim, that can allow you to keep centered, right? So before we have before we establish through the use of intentional attention a center of gravity in ourselves, that will always happen. I will always be a leaf in the wind, and the wind being, whatever happens, it's like or a victim of the flood, the waters that. So we have to build something so that we can be the house, the temple for that presence that comes and goes, because that presence is always there. I think that's what Gurdjieff speaks about. That's the beginning. That's why. But you need the body in order to do that. So you need to be able to concentrate your attention in things that are real, but that are more subtle, which has to do with our etheric body and the centers. And in most traditions, you start that below the abdomen, in what they call the lower chakra. Or, well, it's not the lowest of the chakras, but it's something that you can concentrate there, and from there establish a foundation, a base, so you can start building what Gurdjieff calls creating moon in oneself. And it's not a theoretical thing. It's something that is done intentionally with vision and with energy and with breath. And until you start doing that, it's just theoretical. It's just something that you think of, so we have to find a way to build, to concentrate our energies in a center of gravity that gives us the solidity, that gives us the base to house that presence in a permanent way. That presence is never gone, but it's we are gone. So that's how I see it. So it's a practical thing. It's not a theory. It's not psychology or morality. It has to do with the concentration of a substance, the substance of I.
So the desalting or the desalination is something that finally needs to happen internally.
Yeah, happens in the subtle part of the body, in the etheric body. One of the things that of the dramas or the tragedies of our education is this dualistic thinking that the body is one thing, the spirit is another thing. So the spirit is something etheric out there that we yearn for. When we die, we will get rewarded, and so on and so forth. And our body is despiteful, spiteful, something that we should disregard, or something that is an obstacle. Well, it's only an obstacle if we use it incorrectly. But the obstacle is the means. Without a body, we could not work on ourselves. We're not angels or ghosts. We are incarnated spirit. And we're incarnated spirit because we need the body, particularly the what we don't see of the body, but it's there if you investigate it, to develop ourselves, to be a temple, to incarnate the verb, as they say in the Catholic tradition. The verb and the verb was made flesh. The verb was made flesh. The verb is the word of God, or is the spirit. It's made flesh. What does that mean? It means to bring it into the body. How can you do that without the body? If you think that the body is evil and dirty and negative, and then there is this duality. There is the body, and then there is the spirit. That's the misinterpretation of many religions that have created this doesn't help, because then you're a sinner or a saint. There is no in between. You cannot be human and spiritual at the same time. You cannot enjoy a good meal or whatever without guilt, because that's not a spiritual. I mean, that's exaggeration. But that duality that has been introduced in our thinking and our feelings, it's one of the main things that we have to look. And some traditions are very, very clear about, like Tantra Yoga is extremely, they say outright, you need the body. Being born in a body is a blessing, because it's the most adequate level to progress spiritually. So we have to, one of the practices that they have is that they ponder about that, how fortunate I am to have been born in a human body, because that gives me an opportunity to do something that the animals can do. 1 or 2 brain beings cannot do that, but a 3 brain being can do it. And the ghost cannot do it either, right? So we have to make it real. We have to make it practical and real, and in order to do that, we have to use the body.
We need to be the fakir, the monk, and the yogi all at the same time.
Right.
Where does the Sly Man fit in here, Oka?
That is the Sly Man.
That's all of those together?
Yes.
Yes. Well, there's something very. The way of the sly man doesn't come along all the time. Only when everything is on the street, when there's a mixed up situation that we are experiencing right now. Everything is available. We're all in contact with one another. So, the fourth way is a very special way. And Gurdjieff was really a fourth way man, as I am. So, it's really important to understand the fourth way as the way of the sly man. So, sly man uses everything. It's not. It's a very flexible person in that respect. Is interested in everything and doesn't reject or become conservative in many ways. So he really eats life. That's what a sly man does. That's the fourth way. And the fourth way really is you have to be. You need a solid general education in esotericism to be a sly man. So the yogi and the emotion and the monk, the emotional way. And yogis, that's highly misunderstood. There are many yoga systems. Even our work is a yoga system. Gurdjieff called it Haida yoga. It's a yoga system. The old yoga systems are tremendous. If you're interested in the Upanishads or in the Vedas, you can really find tremendous material for work. Or the dictionary Scripture and Myth from Gaskell is even it's a gold mine. So yes.
This is Diane. I have just come from some physical therapy, and so I was late getting on in the class. But getting back to what Marcel was saying, one of the things that we've been working on with me is my breathing. And breathing into my diaphragm and then separating muscles or focusing on certain muscles in my body. And the improvement that I have felt in my body since I've really been taking in air in a different way, and also in my sittings to be focused on my breathing has really helped me be aware of myself, and it's really helped me in my work as well. But I had an experience last night, and this might not be totally related to what we're talking about, but I recognized I woke up in the middle of the night thinking that I had let myself, I'll just say, I let some power go to my head yesterday in my my job. And I woke up in the night and I realized that I was totally identified with what I was doing and lost myself. And I didn't even realize it until my subconscious woke me up, and I thought, wow, you just totally lost yourself in what you did. And so I woke up with that this morning. Between that and then going right to my physical therapy and focusing on my breath and my breathing, it's been a eventful morning for me. Over.
So you had remorse of conscience. That's what you experienced.
so much that I'm going to call the person and apologize. Not that it was a misunderstanding, but it was enough to cause him some grief, and I feel I was misunderstood. But yes, I had remorse. I really did, Marcel.
So that's a true feeling, you see. That has nothing to do with your emotions. Your emotions, you felt that you were on top, that you were right, that the other person was wrong, blah, blah, blah. But your feeling, which is a true thing from the soul, tells you what it is. Right? That's the difference between emotions and feelings. It's right there.
It is, and it was a beautiful example for me to be aware of the work and what a difference it has made in my life. And I am trying hard. I am really trying to come from my heart. I didn't come from my heart yesterday. I came from, wow, this is the law, and this is the way the law works. So, yeah. And then I felt bad about it.
Well, the feeling bad, I don't know about it, but the fact is that had you not gone through that experience, you would have missed the lesson about the work, about what is it that we're trying to do here. You see, now you can separate two things. You can separate feelings from an emotion. You can separate ego from essence, and so you learn something. Yeah.
It's also about the work versus the world out there. You know,
Absolutely.
when you go out and you're walking around and you have a job to do, let's say, and you can see the difference between what I am working towards in my own spiritual development and the world, and how different they are. So what if it's the law? You know, it's who made up that law. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Gurdjieff would say that you can even conform externally, but know better internally, because sometimes you have to play the game, right? Sometimes you get a degree, for instance, and you have credibility because you have academic, credentials. And that's a game. I mean, to some extent, that's completely a game. And you have to go through that so that you can operate in the world, and yet you know that who you are is not your credentials or your position in an organization, and yeah, it's completely different. So the laws for the work and the laws for our inner development have absolutely nothing to do with what's going on out there. You know, how we're recognized or praised or the contrary, or humiliated. It has nothing to do with it. And yet, those situations, we have to live in both worlds. We have to live between two mediums, right? That's what meditation is. You have to live inside and outside and be able to deal with that. Otherwise, you would be in a monastery if that's what your interest is. And then, shun the world. And you would be you have a vow of silence, a vow of chastity, a vow of poverty. I mean, that's a way, but it's a long, long way, and it's not as smart as the fourth way.
And other interesting pieces, when I woke up before my sitting, I was reading chapter 28 of the Tales, and it was a bit about power in there, and it's kind of hit me right in the face of what this, just as you're saying, I have a foot in both worlds and how to manage that in my life. It was a lot easier when I didn't have, and I'm just calling it a job, but outside work to do. So it's wonderful the way this work is with me all the time, and the little ways, just even getting back to the breathing and breathing deeply into the diaphragm and how our bodies are put together and how it's connected in there too, and how little I know about that part of me, as well as what I'm learning externally around me. You know, the sitting, Oka, that, and I don't know what number it is, but where we do the sensing and feeling. I'm beginning to understand that, but it's still a little forced for me to feel from my heart. But I'm beginning to understand that more and more the more I work on it versus sensing.
That's number 8. The distinction between sensing and feeling is obligatory for work. That's why Gurdjieff spoke about it so much at the end of his life. We must understand in that connection that we do not work for knowing what is true or what is not true, or adapt the work to science, or adapt science to the work, or to understand Beelzebub tales or not, or to think that elders in the work know everything and that you know nothing. That's not what it is about. This work is way more about the body than we think, and way more about the nervous system, the etheric nervous system. And that is why we need this distinction between sensing and feeling. So I'm glad you bring that up, because in the tales in Arts Absurd, he tells us that our feeling center is dispersed, that it is all over the place. And this is really true. It's really true. It's what the Archangel Louisos did to us. And it's a brain. It is a brain that can be used if we work for it. So this sitting that Madame de Salzman gives in her book, and that I've given, sitting number 8, is a sitting to really work for. You have to work for the distinction between sensing and feeling. And it's really important, because we have to extract the substance from our feeling center to code the higher in us. This is why we should not become too identified with our emotions, with our emotions. That's basically it. They're okay, there's nothing wrong with them. But we need to strive for something else. We need to strive for an unpolluted, clean feeling center. And to strive for that, we need remorse of conscience. And we need these sittings very much. And we need to vivify our higher level of vibrations with the higher chakras in it, with the pathways and the 3 pathways in the center of the spine. And, so and that therefore we need to practice non-identification. So, and also do it in a little bit of a light way, not too heavy. Because or else it's like I said that last time too. It's like a diet, if you do diet too fast and you lose weight very quickly, then you gain weight also very quickly. So you need to work in a very intelligent way, drip by drip by drip by drip. You work, and you use this 80 years that you have in the body for work. It's completely different, than using it for life. You use it for work. That's a big difference in attitude towards life. It's an eternal attitude. It's a Castanian attitude. You use this life for work, drip by drip by drip. You sit, you try to remember yourself, you try to observe, you try to know and understand that this machine can make substances that we do not make in the ordinary way, and you go on. You go on and on and on. So this sitting, this distinction between sensing and feeling, very well explained in Madame her book. Very good sitting. Also the other sitting for opening up in the chapter A Body of Energy. Very important sitting. But also use other stuff, like breathing. They say in our work, should not mess with breathing. Go to someone that really knows how to do it, There. That's what Gurdjieff said too, But everybody makes a new religion out of it. So there's really something to breathing that we need.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, but not as loud as you used to be.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yes, really bad. That's really bad. But I can hear you a little bit.
Maybe move the mic a little closer to yourself, Will.
Well, yeah, I'm having problems with this. I have a different phone, and the volume of how I hear other people, sometimes I can barely hear people. So there's something
No,
wrong
the
with
microphone that you have associated with your earphones.
Well, no, even with I put these earphones in so I could hear better. Without the earphones, I literally have to put my cell phone right against my ear to hear some people speak.
But
Even though my
we can hear you,
volume-
you know.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah.
Go
Anyway,
ahead.
But I have a hard time. You may be able to hear me. I have a hard time hearing people. Anyways, we talk a lot about sensing the body. We talk a lot about feeling and discerning the difference between feeling and sensing. But to me, it seems we don't talk about what's the right function of our intellectual center or thinking. Because that, for me, what's been happening in the few past couple of weeks is awareness of a more correct functioning of my intellectual center in relation to sensing and feeling. And noticing how... Oh, go ahead.
That's a very good question. The intellectual center needs to keep you on track. You see? So Gurdjieff called it the policeman. But it needs to, you need the intellectual center very, very, very much. Only for convincing the feeling and the moving instinct, the horse, so to speak, to participate in your work. So the intellectual center needs to convince the other centers to work. That's why he called it the policeman. So, and the horse doesn't want to work, you know. It wants his way. So the intellectual center needs to use common sense, that you tell yourself that you have to work. So the intellectual center needs to tell you that your house is on fire. And then you say, my house is not on fire. And then something happens to you and your house is on fire.
I know what I'm noticing, and I what you say, I agree with, or makes sense to me. Is that my body's, I work with sensing, I work with feeling, and then my intellectual center is like imagery and memory. And that when I get identified, there's an impression comes in, and I start imagining all this stuff that's not true. When I'm present and I'm sensing and I'm feeling, I can see, like I can see my whole life. And I can see what's going on in my life, and I can see the actions I do when I'm identified, and I can see my aim. So it's this imagery and memory that gives me a clear direction. Or it's like I can see the reality of the situation. And if I want to react, I can get identified and go off in a lot of imagination. But when I come back and sense my body and I feel, and I see visually what's going on, then it's like it's pretty clear what's up and what I need to do.
Yes,
it's all this imagery.
Yes. So your mind needs to tell you why your feeling is not incarnated in your sensing. Your mind is the alarm clock. You see? It's the alarm clock that wakes you up. So the alarm clock tells you, why is my feeling not incarnated in my sensing? How come? How come that I'm not incarnated in my body? That's the mind's function. The mind understands that. And then the feeling has to incarnate into the sensing. So the mind has to keep you on track. It has to tell you how real this is.
It's like my mind can see what's going on.
Yes, your mind can see what's going on. And then, you need to convince the other part of you to work.
Right.
That's the mind's job. So the mind cannot understand you or the universe by itself. So the mind tells the other parts of you, come on, let's make a bigger mind. Let's work together, the three of us.
Right.
Another way or another aspect of that is that in certain religious traditions or esoteric traditions, or there is imagery, as you rightly mentioned. So, for instance, the idea of Noah's Ark, that you have to build something. Noah's Ark is the Ark of the Alliance for the Jews. The church in Catholicism is the ark, that is a vehicle that. Okay. So when, instead of verbalizing all that stuff, you are able to use your imagination creatively to envision what you desire for, what you're called for, or there are so many images that some may not appeal to you, and some may, like Jason and the Argonauts, looking for the golden fleece, or Isis and Osiris, and the dismemberment of Isis and how of Osiris, and how Isis brought it together, or the resurrection of Christ, or the Dhyani Buddhas in Tantra Buddhism. The Dhyani Buddhas are great. I'm using them because they tell you this is not something that you praise and have a cult for and adore outside of yourself. You make these images. You train your imagination to envision, to bring your feeling and your sensing together to participate in a vision of your innermost desire, and that's an incredible intelligence. It's an intelligence that is not verbal intelligence; it's image intelligence. That's very powerful, and you cannot do that without the head. It's what Oka says. The head is sort of the initiator of the idea, and then it figures out a way to bring the energy of the feeling and the sensing to participate into making that real, building that inner world.
So how would we make that an exercise for next time? Oka, Marcel, we're running out of time. So what would be an exercise that would implement the mind to be the part of us?
Go on.
You can use the Sphinx. You can use the Sphinx in the field. Are you familiar with the Sphinx?
I need for y'all to think of an exercise, and you can use.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking of an exercise, and I'm sorry, it's in the tales. I'll bring it up. Gurdjieff says that the Akal dance in Atlantis, they had a symbol in the central yard of their temple, and the symbol was an sphinx that had the legs of a lion, the body of a bull, the wings of an eagle, and the head was made by the breast of a virgin. And you can envision that, and then he explains what each of those things are. You can make a sitting out of that, where I've done it, and I think it's fantastic.
Okay, so I'm gonna challenge y'all, because we have a meeting we've got to attend with Cy and John and Mary. So I'm going to ask that y'all write that up in an exercise and send it through the email to everyone, please.
You must work with the distinction between sensing and feeling.
Okay.
That's what you need to do.
Right. And so, utilizing what you were telling Will, how would you do that? So that's all I'm asking. Okay. So we will see you all next week, and thank you for attending. And so Vish, Cy, Mary, and Gwen will stay online. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.